What is up, guys? Top Tier Yu-Gi-Oh here, and today I've got a Kashtira Fiendsmith Snake-Eye deck profile for you guys. And I've been playing this exact same list for like the past 3 weeks. So before Rage of the Abyss and this weekend with Rage of the Abyss. And the deck has been performing well in either case. And so there's no Azamina cards in this deck, no Fuwalos, but the deck plays perfectly fine into it. So you don't need those cards for this deck. This is just a simple Snake-Eye deck that just works. And so let's go ahead and get into the list. Alright, so naturally I think we should start with our starter cards. And so for our 1-card starters, we have 1 copy of Snake-Eye Ash, 3 Bonfires, which usually search Snake-Eye Ash, 3 copies of Diabellstar the Black Witch, and then 3 copies of Wanted, which generally search Diabellstar the Witch. So you've got 10 1-card starters, all of which are full combo, which makes this deck extremely consistent. And now obviously there are more Snake-Eye cards, but we're going to get to those a little bit later. Next, for the Fiendsmith engine, we've got 3 copies of Engraver, 1 Tract, and then 1 Lurie. And then for our other side engine, the Kashtira engine, we've got 2 copies of Pressure Planet and a Terraforming, Fenrir, Unicorn, and then Birth. For the Kashtira cards, I wanted to go with 1 Terraforming and 2 copies of Pressure Planet instead of 3 planets, because planet's not necessarily good in multiples, and Terraforming gives you the option to go for Divine Temple, because that play does come up sometimes. However, it does play a little bit more into Droll, which we might be seeing more of as this format progresses, with more people playing Mulcharmy and then more people playing Droll, which can sometimes stop Mulcharmies from at least going too far. So we'll see about that, but for now, the Terraforming's been pretty solid. And now sometimes you'll also see lists that play more copies of Fenrir and Unicorn, but and I guess while those cards are really good, my thinking was just that I don't want to see too many of them. I don't want to see multiple Kashtira cards in a hand, and I definitely don't want to see multiple of the same Kashtira card. And that's going to be a theme that you see throughout this deck. I don't want to see multiples of really anything, so with the non-engine, that's something I try to keep in mind as well to some extent. And so really it comes down to, is that 2nd or 3rd copy of a card worth the risk of drawing multiples to it? And in this case, I don't quite think it is. So now getting back to Snake Eyes, back to the original point of this deck, you could say, we have what I didn't want to include with the 1-card starters, because those are just individually so powerful that they deserve their own little spotlight, but these are what I would call the, I guess, 2-card combos, or maybe additional extenders is a better term for them. So for these we have Poplar, which could be a 1-card play. You can normal summon Poplar, get original, use original, but it's, hey, that hypes Poplar up a little bit too much. It's not a good 1-card combo, so it's generally better to give yourself a little bit of grace in that regard, I think, than to say, oh, I've got 11 1-card starters. Not really, but Poplar's good. Poplar's good. Next, we have 2 copies of Oak and then 1 copy of Original. Oak and Original especially are very good in this deck because they work well with either your Engravers, Tract, or any of your Kashtira cards effectively, in order to get you to your full combo. So for, let's say for example, you have Planet on board, you Planet, you get Unicorn for Birth, normal summon Oak, now you can send Oak, Planet, get Ash, and then from there you have full Snake-Eye combo. And so even though you're not starting with Ash Blossom, it gets you to Ash Blossom, and then you haven't used the on summon effect, and so when you summon it back, you can use that on summon effect later. And so Oak is really good in that regard, and it works really well with your Kashtira cards as well as with the Fiendsmith cards. And with the Fiendsmith cards, you can even save a body on board by like equipping Requiem to one of your monsters, and then you can send Requiem with Oak, get to Ash, and then still do your full Snake-Eye combo while still preserving that Fiendsmith material on board, that light Fiend material on board, I should say, that's going to let you go into sequence, or maybe even a Caesar later on in the turn, depending on how you want to play your combo out. And so Oak is really good at 2, but I don't want it at 3 because, again, I don't want to see it in multiples, and it's also not really good at any stage of the game. And so drawing it too early in the game without these is not good. Drawing it with a good starter card isn't necessarily good either. You don't really want to draw it like in simple game states either. It's not horrible in those situations, but it's not great either. Just especially with the limiting of Poplar, it's hard to keep, like, you run out of gas for sure. But if you manage your resources wisely and you use your interruptions well, you can kind of mitigate that and end games pretty quickly. And the original is like the exact same thing. Like if you have a face-up card on board, you just send it with original, and that's like fine. You could make an argument to play a 2nd original over the 3rd copy of Oak, and I think that would be fine as well, actually. And then finally, for the engine requirements, we've got 1 copy of Divine Temple, 1 Flame Burge, 1 Snake-Eye Diabellstar, and then 1 Snake-Eye Birch. And now we're going to start We're gonna start with Snake-Eye Birch because it's so underrated. Obviously, it's not the best. I'd rather this be more copies of either Snake-Eye Ash or Poplar in the deck. That'd be better, obviously. But in the context of the current Snake-Eye deck, Birch is actually not horrible, and the quick effect does come up. But really, more than anything, it's, you know, it's an extra Snake-Eye body. Like, you go through your combo, and you will usually go through Ash, Oak, Poplar, Snake-Eye Bellstar, and Flame Birch. So the only, like, if you were not playing Birch, the only Snake-Eye monster that would be left in your deck is that second copy of Oak. And if that's the case, I mean, it's just difficult to get to. It's just difficult to continue playing turn after turn. We just don't have Snake-Eye cards. But having at least one extra one allows you to use Original to shuffle one of them, or put one of them back into the deck, and then get the other Oak, but you still got this in the deck, and so in your deck. And so there are a lot of games where you just keep this in your deck actually and play with the other cards. Like, it's, at worst, simply having Snake-Eye in the name is really good. At best, the effect of Summon from deck is actually pretty relevant. It can help you dodge targeting effects on your opponent's turn. It can help you get things in the graveyard at opportune times for interruptions, such as like a Flame Birch or a Desiree. And so you might have like Desiree equipped with Sequence, something else on your board, right? Use Desiree's effect to negate something. Then later on your opponent's turn, use Birch, tribute itself in the Desiree, summon out, I don't know, that second Oak from your deck. Who knows? But then you can use Desiree's graveyard effect to deal with something on your opponent's board. So it's an extra kind of hidden disruption sometimes that can be very, very good. It can help you get rid of Princess too if you need to do that. So Birch is like actually kind of good. And then for these three, we all know what they are. We all know what they do. You gotta play them. Alright, so now for the non-engine, we've got 3 copies of Ash Blossom, 3 Nibs, 3 Imperms. All of these are pretty standard. You're going to see these 9 in basically every single deck right now. However, there is an argument for dropping Nib, because, especially post-ROTA the Abyss, because if you're playing against Yubel, for example, an early Phantom is basically going to ensure that Nib never resolves, and they can just play around it pretty well. If you're playing against Azamina Snake-Eyes, they can put up the Ilia Sylvia pretty early, and then you're just never using Nibiru. So you always are going to need Nib in combination with something else, maybe even 2 other hand traps, and even then, those decks can still play around it. And if you're playing against Tempai, you're 100% never using Nibiru. So most of the top decks, you're just never using Nib against, and so there is an argument for not playing it. But if they don't open ideally, or if you do open multiple hand traps, which we play enough in order to do, I do think that Nibiru is a solid card to have in your deck, especially just at like locals or regionals, where you're going to see a variety of decks. And in particular, this feels weird to say, but if you're not as confident, I would say, because if you, like, against the top decks, it's not ideal. But if you lose in the first couple of rounds at events, you might not be playing that many of the top decks. And so against those other decks, then you're going to want Nibiru a lot. And so it's like, you might go to a regional, lose maybe round 1 or round 2, but then you're putting that bracket with all those weird decks, and against those weird decks, you're going to want that Nib, and then winning out in those rounds is going to get you back to the top tables. And so Nib's tricky. You definitely want it in your list. I like it in the main deck. With that, I'm also playing 2 copies of Druis Worm and a Magnamut. And so that's it for the hand traps. I've got 12 of them. If I were to make any changes, it would be potentially putting Nib or the Bestials or both of them into the side deck, and instead you could play Veiler or Ghost Ogre. I think Ghost Ogre is actually going to be really good, because Ghost Ogre is going to be great against Azamina Snake-Eyes. You can hit the new secret rare Deception. That's very strong. It's very powerful. You can also use it against their inboards. You can use it against IP Masquerena or SP Little Knight. You can use it against Yubel's inboard with Raid. It's decent against Sequence. It's also going to be pretty good against Tempai, against the field spell. They're going to get to it somehow. So Ogre, I do think, is solid, and Veiler is just standard. Veiler, you can't go wrong with Veiler. It's classic, man. Classic hand trap. But then for the rest of the non-engine, I've got 1 copy of Angel Statue Azaroon. I have 1 copy of Forbidden Droplets, 1 copy of Talents, and then 1 copy of Pot of Prosperity. And so once again, I didn't want to draw multiples of anything. I want to see a lot of variance in this deck. I want to open 4 to 5 different cards. If this deck has 4 to 5 different cards, you are probably going to win the game. And so I didn't want to go with like 3 talents or 3 droplets and commit fully to one of them. But I found this ratio of one of each to be very, very good. And something that I was really skeptical on at first is the prosperity, because the extra deck space is so tight. but depending on the situation, it can become more clear what you need to banish, whether it be 3, 6, and which of your extra deck you banish for it. But when it resolves, it's very, very powerful because of the number of 1-card starters that you do play. So it helps the deck with consistency, as well as in the post-side matches or post-side games. It helps you see those sided cards. Or it can also be like the theoretical second copies of talents or droplets. So I like the pot a lot. Every time I drew it, it was very impactful. There were so many games where it's like you draw suboptimal, but you have pot, and then pot gets you to bonfire or something, or wanted. That happens so many times. And then these two are just insane. And now one thing I do want to mention, like something that has come up multiple times in the past couple of weeks, is this deck does actually just, within the engine at least, it has 0 outs to a light and dark Chaos Angel. And these at least give you a way to do it. Like, you do have the imperms, that's true, but having to set the imperm first definitely makes it tricky. I did like having actual outs to a light and dark Chaos Angel, as well as other things. They're just good. They're just generally good. They can be used going first, going second. They can be good in different parts of the game, except for Talents. Talents isn't good in the late game because your opponent's going to probably already use all their hand traps and all their interruptions. So Talents is only good in the early game, but it is good going first or second. Droplet's good at any point in the game, first, second, doesn't matter. It's just an overall very, very powerful card. But that's it for the main deck. That's 45 cards. So now moving on to the extra deck, we've got 1 copy of Promethean Princess. I have considered playing 2. I do want to play a second one because it comes up when you're trying to push for game, especially on turns 2 and 3. It's just easy to go into from your extra deck versus having to bring it back from the grave and maneuver around with all of that shenanigans. But having a second copy does come up. It would be nice. But right now I'm only playing 1 copy of IP Masquerena, 1 copy of SP Little Knight, 1 solo Hat Rabbit, which is incredibly underrated. People forget about a lot of things about this card, actually. I mean, they forget about the spell trap pop. That's very good, and it also triggers when you summon your Snake-Eye monsters from the spell and trap card zone, because it only says if a monster is summoned from the spell trap zone. So there's a lot of synergy with the Snake-Eye deck, actually. But then also they forget that it can't be destroyed by battle. And that's actually really relevant because it's difficult for your opponent to out and also kill you through. For a lot of decks, they have to use SP Little Knight to clear it, but in that case, they're not attacking directly. So it's a card that you can just leave on your inboard, and sometimes you just don't die. And that's good enough for you to make it to that turn 2, to where you're like using that Oak that you summoned, you're using Original, you're using Snake-Eye Belt, and like you can just put so much pressure on your opponent and usually OTK and go for game. And so Silo Hat Rabbit is very good for just simply surviving in a lot of cases. Then we've also got 1 copy of Anima, 1 Hida, and then 1 Nightmare Phoenix. Then for the Fiendsmith extra deck cards, we've got 1 copy of Moon, Requiem, Sequence, and Desiree, and then we have the Necroquip Princess and the Caesar. Now, I feel like you definitely need them. They make the deck better, but I don't go into these as often, so they're typically what I'm banishing off of the Prosperity, as well as a lot of times like Nightmare Phoenix if I'm going first, or Raging Phoenix and Zelantis. You don't always need these in your deck either. Like, you don't even need them to OTK. I do like these as the final 2 kind of flex spots in the extra deck, but they definitely get banished off of pot a lot. But that pretty much wraps up the extra deck. It's pretty standard. The only thing I've even considered changing is adding that 2nd copy of Promethean Princess. And now finally, to wrap things up with the side deck, we've got 3 copies of Mulcharmy Fuwalos, 3 copies of Phantasme, 2 Cosmic Cyclones, 1 Anti-Spell, 1 Skill Drain, and 1 copy of There Can Be Only One. And then finally, the last couple of cards I play are for time scenarios, which I absolutely hate playing, but I am playing 3 copies of Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood, and then 1 copy of Agave Dragon, which you can use it to burn your opponent just through your extracts. You don't have to draw something, so it makes it pretty consistent. So it's good when you're going first in a game 3, whereas the Dogwood's pretty good if you're going second in a game 3. It can also be decent if you're going first in game 3, because if your opponent like nibs you or bestials you, you can just chain this and then gain life points off of that, which is actually kind of insane. But the combo decks this format just take so long, and hey, I'm guilty too, because Snake Eyes combos takes a while too. Like, you still have to go through all the shuffling, searching all the cards, and it's redundant with the Ash getting Oak, and then Oak bring back Ash. Like, it can be redundant, can take a while, and then U-Bell takes a while. All of the other random decks everything takes a long time. And I think you do need to be prepared for time in one way or another, and this is what works for this deck, unfortunately. I really hate the time scenarios. Like, most of my losses in the past couple of weeks have been in time. Like today, I went to a locals, went 4-1, got top 8, yay. But my only loss was in game 3. I needed to clear my opponent's board before comboing. So I had to go into the battle phase, attack over something, he droplets me, and I take 50 life points. And then I'm able to clear his board, or like I attack with something else good over that monster, clear the board, main phase 2, full combo, and then I ended up losing in time. But the crazy thing is that like the reason I lost is because it took a long time to do my to play to a point to where I can go battle phase and attack, then attack. They're thinking that takes a while. Main phase 2 combo, that takes a while. Then on their turn they get to break my board, that takes a while. Then back on my turn I have to figure out how to get damage on board, and that takes like it just takes time. I understand that we can't have tournaments lasting all. I understand that we can't have events lasting all day, but man, the game has gotten complex enough to a point to where 45 minutes sometimes just isn't enough. It's unfortunate and there's nothing we really do about it, but hey, that's the game. Aside from those, the real side deck cards are here. So typically what I'll do if I'm like going second is I'll side out all the Kashtira cards. I'll side out like the 3 field spells, the 2 monsters in the birth, and I'll side in the Mulcharmies and the Phantasmes. If it's a matchup where one of them might be good, like, or one set of cards would be good, like let's say Bestials aren't very good against, I don't know, let's say plants, then I would side those out and maybe side it in the Mulcharmies. So you can side in one set, but usually I'll side in both sets. Then these are the only cards I side in going first. Sometimes I'll do the Cosmic Cyclones depending on the matchup, but I just wanted to have outs to my opponent's Floodgates in case I play Runic Stun. Or just, there are just some decks where you just need outs to stuff. Like if you play against any Fiendsmith deck, this is pretty good to answer Desiree just 1-for-1. I played against Kashtira earlier, being able to like get rid of Birth or deal with a planet. That was very strong. There's just a lot of situations where Cosmic Cyclone comes up. So then for the real cards in the side deck, it's really just the Mulcharmies, the Phantasmes, Floodgates, and Cosmic Cyclone. If I'm going second, I'll typically just side out all the Kashtira cards, and then I'll side in the Mulcharmies and the Phantasmes. The reason for that is that of course, Fenrir is good going second, obviously. Being able to special summon bodies is good going second. But more so than that, I just want more cards, and both of these give me more cards because I feel like Snake-Eye is one of the better performing decks in complex game states, and these allow me to get to those complex game states. But then also Phantasme gives you protection against targeting, and there is a bit of a contradiction between your Kashtira cards and the Phantasme, the Nib, and the Bestials, because all of those put bodies on the board, which is great for your combos, but you cannot special summon your Kashtira monsters if you already have monsters in your monster zone. And so I just go ahead and side them all out, and obviously cards like Birth are horrible going second, so you take out a brick and some okay-ish cards for like really good going second cards, and that's worked very, very well for me. If I'm going first, I'll typically side out either Nib or the Bestials depending on the matchup, and then I'll side in the 3 Floodgates. And then the Cosmic Cyclones just come in like on a need case basis. I guess you could say like in certain matchups they're just very, very good, in other matchups they're not good at all. But I wanted to have something in my list somewhere that would allow me to deal with Floodgates, that would allow me to deal with just the randomness that is 2024 Yu-Gi-Oh! And Cosmic Cyclone is just flexible enough to fit that role. Alright guys, real quick, I do want to show you the combo for how to play through a Mulcharmy Fuwalos with just a Snake-Eye Ash. And so this is the play that I've been making. There might be a better one, but this is just what I've been doing so far, and it has been working out pretty well for me. And so the new Mulcharmy Fuwalos is going to allow your opponent to draw when you special summon from deck or the extra deck. Obviously the Snake-Eye deck does a lot of that, so there is the opportunity for them to draw a lot of cards, but we don't want them to do that. We've got our plays to play through and around it. This is exactly what you do. And so you normal summon the Snake-Eye Ash, you activate the effect to add the Poplar to hand, the Poplar effect to summon itself. So that's not a special summon from deck, it summons itself from hand, which is fine. Poplar effect will get the Snake-Eye Diabellstar, Divine Temple of the Snake-Eye. That will get the Snake-Eye Diabellstar into your spell and trap card zone, right? So then from here, you would activate the Ash's effect, sending the Snake-Eye Diabellstar, and this will be your opponent's first opportunity to draw off with the Fuwalos. They might have activated it like in the standby phase and just shotgun it, or they might chain it to this. Either way, from that, if they do chain or if they have already activated it, you can go ahead and special summon Flamebird from your deck. So they're going to draw one off of that. Hey, fine, not much you can do about that. That first one's coming. But then from here, what you can do is go ahead and just link off the Poplar and the Flamebird into IP Masquerena. And from here, you can use Poplar and the Flamberge effect. Flamberge can summon back the Poplar and the Ash, and then the Flamberge, or not the Flamberge, but the Poplar can spell trap the Snake-Eye Bellstar. You can activate Snake-Eye Bellstar's effect to summon itself and then spell trap zone the Flamberge. And now from here, you can just link off the Snake-Eye Bellstar and the Ash and then go for your Silhouette Rabbit. So then they're going to get their third draw. They had one off the Flamberge, one off the IP, then one off the Silhouette. Silhouette will set your Azaroon, and you're going to have a end board of Masquerena, Silhouette, Poplar. You're going to have Azaroon and Flamberge and Spell Trap card zone, and then you still have the Temple as well. So your opponent did draw 3 cards off of this, but it's a lot less than they would have drawn if you did your normal combo, and it's also a lot better than just simply stopping on like the summon of Flamberge or something. Don't do that. You know, you got to give your opponent some draws. It's worth it because they might have drawn 3, but we have 4 disruptions plus follow-up, and so we've got the IP into SP, so that's 2 disruptions. You have SP first banish and the SP effect to banish another card. Next you have the Silhouette effect to destroy a spell or trap. That's actually really relevant against a lot of decks. That can be very powerful. And then we also have the Azaroon effect to negate a summon. So we have 4 disruptions. In terms of follow-up, we've got Temple's ability to summon out the Flamberge Dragon, which can be difficult for decks to deal with. If they do deal with it, we can trigger its effect again. Poplar, when it gets sent to the graveyard, you can put back the Snake-Eye Bellstar in your spell and trap card zone to give you more follow-up on the next turn. And so this board like isn't the best, obviously, but it's far from being bad, and especially if you can back that up with more non-engines such as like an Imperm or an Ash Blossom, you're still looking at like maybe 5 or 6 disruptions depending on that situation. And also keep in mind that Silhouette Rabbit cannot be destroyed by battle, and so this does require certain things to out it. In some decks it's only an SP Little Knight, in which case they're not attacking directly, and so you're surviving, getting to go to that second turn where you have the follow-up, you're able to play, you're no longer under Mulcharmy, and you can just straight up go for game. And so that's been sort of the Mulcharmy combo I've been going for, but definitely let me know if there's something better. But this has been working pretty decently for me. But alright guys, that is the Kashtira Fiendsmith Snake-Eye deck profile. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Again, this is just a simple list that it just works. You know, you don't need Azamina cards, you don't need the new Fuwalos, but hey, if you do want to see Azamina Snake-Eyes, I will have a deck profile for that somewhere on the screen once I get around to making it, which I will do as soon as I get my hands on more cards out of Raid to the Abyss. I don't have really any of them yet. I haven't opened it much yet, but hey, I've been playing locals all weekend against Raid to the Abyss, and I've got a lot of packs. Like I think right now I've got like 6 box and like a stack of packs. Like hey, I've been cleaning up this weekend with this deck, so you guys can confidently play it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave your questions, comments, concerns down in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in the next video.